Welcome to Silicon Valley Life. In each episode, you'll get an insider's look at what makes Silicon Valley special, how people pursue ideas, deal with failure, and enjoy life. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, concordiaventures.com. Now, here are the hosts of Silicon Valley Life, Naeem Zafar and Meena Meyyappan.
Well, hello, viewers and friends. We're back with the podcast. Good to have you. Hello, Meena. How are you?
I'm doing fine after a break, Naeem. How are
Yeah.
you doing? How's the 2 weeks been? Give us a little bit of a summary before I come in.
Well, the 2 weeks have been very, very hectic because I'm teaching summer. So I have 32 students from Norway at University of California, Berkeley, which I'm teaching them about entrepreneurship. And I had 20 students from Pakistan's leading business school come visit Silicon Valley for 10 days. So we've been hosting them and showing them how does Silicon Valley work. So it's been very, very hectic, busy days, while it is one of the hottest summer in California. So that's makes it exciting week. Last 2 weeks were pretty hectic. How about you?
Mine is the complete opposite of what your life has been. I've taken a vacation, so I've been off the grid a little bit, and I've disconnected from social media, everything else. But like you said, the heat has been very interesting. So my vacation I stayed in the coast. I stayed on the California coast, and the vacation was really learning how to deal with hot summer days. But fun. A lot of days on the beach, a good stroll, true California life.
That's true California life, and I think that's our topic today because we don't have a guest speaker or guest podcast. We're going to talk about something which many entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs wonder.
Mhm.
What is the role of a startup CEO? What do they do all day? I mean, if you're an engineer and you want to start a company, how will your life change? Or it's something, a role they don't teach you at the school, university, how to be a startup CEO. Yet, a lot is expected of you. So we're going to dive into that topic. And now that I coach other startup CEOs as my main sort of focus job, so it is very interesting to talk to many of them and see what do they struggle with and able to guide them so they can make fewer mistakes and achieve the goals they want.
Awesome.
So yeah,
How about I help you get this topic started, because this has been very near and dear. This is how we connected. So I will never forget the day. There's a big, deep story, but I'll never forget the day I walked in to meet Naeem with a startup idea. And after listening to my idea, he kind of gave me a hint of what I never wanted to hear. Says, "You don't have what it makes to be a CEO." I'll never forget that.
what
Never
did I,
forget that.
what did I say? I said, what did I say?
You don't have what it make. You don't have what is needed to make a CEO. Idea
Startup
is
CEO?
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't have what it means to make it there, but that's okay. We'll figure it out, is what you said. You didn't throw me off either. I will never forget. I went home so upset and mad how someone who knew me for like 20 minutes could make up their mind that I'm not good enough. What have they seen about me? What do they know about me? And how can they make the call? And that's how I started my journey. I'm like, I got to figure this out. It's not something I don't put up well with negative feedback. I always want to recover and show I'm capable. That's me, right? So that's how I started my journey. So now I'm going to ask you, Naeem, when you meet a lot of startup, venture people who startup ventures or CEOs. What are the few things that like you look for in a person when you're looking to invest with them in a startup?
So, well, that is an interesting story. Obviously, it's unfair for anybody to judge somebody in a short period of time. On the other hand, most people judge you in the first 30 seconds they meet you. So that's not common. Now, there's no one type of CEO who succeeds. There are thousands of shades of CEOs with different skills that all can succeed. So it's not like anything which I'm going to say is the way to go. But that's just my observation. What I look for in a startup CEO or any CEO for any senior manager is clarity of thought. Are they clear on what problem are they solving? Who has this problem? Market segmentation. Have they identified a white space? If they have clarity of mind, those things just roll off their tongue with specifics. Most people are still trying to flesh out their thoughts. So they'll use a lot more words. They're convoluted. The clarity is not there. So you can see this is going to be uphill battle. This is going to be hard. So I think that's maybe the first thing people notice. One thing which is not obvious, nobody teaches you, your main job as a startup CEO is what? To say no. Nobody teaches you that. Because everybody comes up to you, they want this, they want that, can we do this? And you're the last person. You have to be able to say a lot more no's than yes. That makes you unlikable. It makes you sort of people grunt behind you, and most people get very uncomfortable with that. You will never be popular again the way you used to be when you were a junior marketing manager.
No, makes
So
sense.
let me pause here. Yeah.
No, this makes sense. The clarity of thought and the ability to stand up and say no. These are very difficult things for an average person, right? Because we always want to make people happy. We're social beings. And the second thing is clarity of thought, because a lot of startup founders are fleshing things out. But I want to continue this journey, this conversation, because I'm very interested here. I'm sure our listeners are interested too. So we go from the journey, you meet a person. And this is the characteristics you look. Now let's talk about an early stage startup CEO. What are their roles? Because the CEO has to play multiple things, if I'm correct, especially early stage when you're starting out is different. If you can help us focus a little bit on, as an early stage startup, what are the kind of roles you might have to play, and how do you put your focus? Where are your focuses? Because I could be focused on 100 things.
So it depends on the CEO and what the strength is, but it really falls, if you can summarize in one word, is selling. You're selling the product idea to a potential customer. You're selling a job to a talented person with less money than they were probably making. You're selling a story to investors so they can open the wallet. So that is selling. And selling is a lot about listening and able to understand what do people want and can you help them achieve that. So if you're good at selling or have to become good at selling, if you're not, find somebody who is and make them your co-founder. But then again, to deep down one level below what you asked, it is the thing which will impact your life more than anything else. And I'll put that into three buckets. Bucket number one is talent acquisition. Because if you don't get the first two or three people as A players, and you're desperate or you're cheap, B players attract C players.
Mm-hmm.
And once A players don't want to join a team which has a bunch of B and C players. So if you are very careful about the first 3 or 4 people you bring on, I've made this mistake more than once myself. I know this deeply hurts later.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. The second one is people fall in love with the solution. They really have to fall in love with the problem. And it's much harder to fully understand the problem from all directions.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is most startup CEOs get excited with
Mm-hmm.
few data points that look pretty promising. They jump on a solution. Now they're married to the solution,
Mm-hmm.
and solution doesn't quite achieve product market fit because it was a flawed solution. They haven't taken the time to fully understand who has this problem. Why do they have this problem? What alternatives they have looked at? Why they haven't bought? So this requires a deeper appreciation of the problem, which most people don't do.
Mm-hmm. So let me
So
pause
yeah.
here and ask two questions to you, right? So there's two kinds of CEOs or founders. One is technical, and then there are technical people who are looking for non-technical, like kind of startups, right? I think when the startup is in your domain and you have a deep understanding technically, it's easy to take that startup as a CEO and run with what you're saying. But an example, like if a person like me who's from technology background is trying to do a social startup, I have a very good idea what the problem is, vetted with a certain amount of the crowd. How can I scale? Because that's not for me, an answer is like, only if you have the depth and you know the problem, you can scale out as a CEO. How do you fill the gap if you're this kind of a person, a CEO in a startup, and you find yourself there?
See, the thing is, you understand the problem for your vantage point.
Mm-hmm.
That may not be the vantage point of other buyers. So I'm an electrical engineer myself. My first company, we started XCAT. We were engineers, we were designing a solution for the engineers for chip design verification.
Mm-hmm.
We were first startup, wanted to be secretive. We spent like a year designing the product without telling anybody. When we came out, only company which bought the product, the one we came from, because the way we used to design chips, it fit that company. It was not appealing to anybody else.
Right.
So this is the caution. Like you said, you're a technical founder. You know the problem. You live it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But caution is your perspective and not broad perspective. Till you talk to 50, 100 other users, you may realize that you had flaws in your thinking.
Got it.
Hard to
That makes
admit for a technical founder because they kind of know it. They know it. They
yeah.
do it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that's the first flaw I would say I found in myself too. Like it's so easy to say I know it and stick with it, and it's very hard to change the mindset. I interrupted you on your second bucket. If you have a third bucket, please do share.
No, third bucket was, So third bucket was you got to become a storyteller, because story is what you're selling to investors and even to employees and customers. You paint a picture of the future, which is better than the future they can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see how this will connect with this and this will happen. And just like that, it happened last time. I think this is possible. And we are deeply committed and passionate to get there. That's a story which you construct. And your job is to make the story come true. You're putting a stake in the ground. You're not BSing anybody. So this is the three elements. If you can stitch them together, that makes the foundation of a very good startup CEO.
And so let me further this question, Naeem. I understand the three buckets and the clarity. Thank you. But as a startup takes off and say that you're doing some amount of investigation and solution, you're building some, you're trying to meet investors, you're trying to hire. CEO does many things, right, at a given day. You're doing marketing, you're doing sales, you're doing like product development, you're doing engineering maybe, and you're even doing like, hiring, right, at a given point in time. How do you prioritize, especially for early stage startups? How do you prioritize? Say that you only have two of you as founders right now. How do you prioritize to get to a minimal viable product? What is the best routes?
Yeah, it's a hard question because every situation is different. It depends on who are the players in your team, so you can be different. But one way which is worth mentioning is, especially when you have more than two people in the team, because when you have two people in the team, you gotta you gotta do everything. I mean, there's nobody else to do it. But when you have like a handful of people in the team, your most important job is to articulate a clear direction and ask people, this is where we need to get to, because you can see if we get there, this, and this will happen. And let them figure out how to get there. It doesn't mean that you disappear and be surprised, because that can happen. Do you say, okay, I don't want to micromanage. I told them where to go. It will magically show up. No, you can't abdicate the responsibility. Good people, if you ask them, how do you plan to get there? Share with me your action plan, and they will share it with you. Then you can ask clarifying questions. Well, what about that? What if that guy didn't join us? What if he didn't only have this much money? What if the customers change the priority? What will you do? So asking that questions, you can streamline, make sure that things get there. It's your job to make sure the trains arrive at time from all three directions.
Makes sense. And now I will ask a more tough question. As you get to know few people, they say the leaders set the culture of the company. Early stage startup company, the culture is very important. How do CEOs set the culture?
So what is culture? Let's start with the definition of culture. My definition is how things get done when there's no written rule for it.
Mm-hmm.
So how things get done is how you behave. If you start every meeting with like kumbaya, how are you? How's your dog? Is your sister back from the village? Then we'll get to the business soon. That becomes a culture, because people who can't stand that will slowly find a way to leave the company. people who like that will find a way to stay with the company. If you start every meeting strictly on time with clarity, what you need to get done, you chased on deadlines and you sort of call people when you don't meet them, that becomes the culture. If you're just walking down the hallway, you see people laughing by the coffee machine, you look at them with a sternly and walk to your office, you just send a signal. That becomes a culture. That's not acceptable behavior. If you join them and join the laugh, that becomes the culture of the company. So really the behavior of the CEO, which defines the culture over time. People gravitate to it or reject it. What's your view on this topic, by the way, in culture?
I found it it's a little bit different. I am like what you said. I believe like the leader sets the culture, right, which I agree with. But what I find difficult is the CEO is one person, right? It is one human being, and each one's unique, right? And I have a certain way of doing things. I have a certain way of wanting to behave. I don't expect everybody to pick culture out of me. I expect the two or three key people that I work with will help me set the culture, right? Because we all come with variances, which is healthy. Having variances in an environment is healthy, but it is also difficult and challenging because three people are setting culture. So I think that's where I come from. But I think the three people that are closest to the startup should set the culture. I think one person setting culture is extremely hard because everybody comes with certain nuances and ways of doing things.
What I observed is that this CEO casts a larger shadow than
Mm-hmm.
anybody imagines. When I was first time CEO, I realized you say something and it's magnified 1,000 times in people's mind.
Yeah.
And it's your positional power. When I was one of the junior marketing guy, I can say all kinds of things and nobody took them terribly seriously. Same person, 2 years later, as a CEO, it's rumors start. People get worried. People start putting their resumes out, the way you talk, the way you look. So you cast a much larger shadow than you possibly realize. It's very hard to get used to that.
And I think this kind of points to something that you won me along in my journey. CEOs are lonely people because of this, right? And you give me a very good example that if you go out for lunch with somebody, somebody else will envision something else is happening. So it spreads a bunch of rumors. And I will never forget that because I went thinking, is this really what happens? And I have observed exactly what you said. People at the top and leadership are lonely people for these very same reasons because in the workplace, they really cannot have a different kind of relationship other than the CEO role. Am I correct in that, Naeem?
Yeah, no, it does very much so. And I think even I say jokingly that, as a CEO, you'll be invited to every party, but you're expected to be the first one to leave.
Yes.
The party really starts after the CEO has left.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, I'm saying, but yeah. So it's kind of hard. That's why it's lonely because you realize, everybody's polite, but okay, I think CEO, why don't you go take care of the business over there?
Yeah.
So we're not
And I
going to
think
let
that
loose.
that's something. No, I agree with you. That's when every CEO should be prepared a little bit for this because it comes as a shocker. Most average, people look to use workplace for their social needs. And if you're going to be a CEO, I think this is a good piece of advice: is like prepare yourself so that you have you're prepared for these kind of incidences, and then you have a life out of work.
Yeah, one more thing which is I think not obvious because many first-time startup CEOs they feel like they're running a democracy. They want to take a
Yes.
vote. Is everybody okay with this? Should we do this? What do you everybody? So there's a difference between subtleties. The way I want to say it, you're not running a democracy.
Mm-hmm.
You're driving consensus. They're two different things. Driving
Mm-hmm.
consensus is that you have heard people's point of view. Perhaps you have, all your people in the room. Is you should go around the room. You should understand what people want. Why do they want? Understand the reason. But you're making the final decision by justifying it. And you may have convinced some people, look, I had everybody. I know some of you want to go left, but I think we should go right. These are my reasoning of going right. Would
Mm-hmm.
you be willing to support me? And I'll take full responsibility if I'm wrong. And I know you told me so, but I want you to get this. This is a subtle difference between driving consensus versus being a dictator. People are much more likely to be support you if they feel heard. And that's the job of the CEO, is to understand the other people, trying to make them feel heard, give them your reason. They may not agree, but once they feel heard, they're more likely to commit to the direction you're outlining. That's driving consensus.
Makes sense. And I will come to one more topic that smaller startup CEOs struggle with: budget. Budget is always tight in a small startup, right?
Sorry, say
And
one more time.
budget is always tight in a
Yeah.
small startup because we got huge numbers to achieve with very minimal amount of investments, right? There's always the case for early stage startups. And when
Yeah.
you struggle with that kind of budget and you're building a team, how best to go about it? Because that's where the most CEOs struggle the most, because they know what an industry compensation is, and a startup compensation is different. So, how do you have these difficult conversations on hiring talent with the given budget you have?
Right. And it is hard, and it depends on every single person is different. But I have had situation when people were making $300,000, $400,000 a year in a large company, was able to hire them at something like $150,000. This is like shocking to some
Hmm.
people.
Yeah.
The reason is, if you're an A player, you have the ability to make the money which you deserve.
Hmm.
But money is for an A player especially, is a fraction of their professional satisfaction and compensation. Smart people, especially A players, want to work on meaningful projects and they can feel the impact. They want to be part of a team which is a winning team. If they were only trying to maximize their total compensation, there's many other ways to get there. So idea is that as a startup CEO, your currency is not just the money you can afford, which is small, but it's your vision and it's your stock options, in addition to the some whatever money you can get. If you can, you got to sell the vision. All of us would rather be part of something which changed the world and had a huge impact. If you can convince people that they could be part of that, you'll be surprised there'll be more flexibility than you may have realized. It's not about just dollars and cents.
I think that's a challenge for a lot of people, because especially in today's industry, you feel lost. I think
Yeah,
selling, like you said, by selling, telling a story becomes more critical, like you're mentioning, to attract
yeah,
the right kind of talent. Um, and so there is this big nuance about remote work and in-person work. As a CEO in today's navigation of startups, it's a huge challenge. In a startup, everybody wants to be close to everybody because there's very low processes, right? Things are still being built in nascent stages. Discussions speed up things. What is your take on today's world, May, as you look at it?
yeah. It's a hard question, and new rules are being written still, so we haven't quite figured out. Now, good news is the short answer is you cannot be 100% remote.
Hmm.
You have to have some hybrid. The reason is that a lot of what happens is a personal relationship. A lot of give and take and compromise happen because you have a friendship or a respect for another
Yeah,
person in the company. They don't develop if you're always on Zoom.
yeah,
So now, thanks to Slack, thanks to Zoom, thanks to Think, people are doing a lot more remote work. But I think it's essential that is it a once a week, once a month, once a quarter, you do bring everybody together more often if you can afford it. So when I did at least salespeople, I brought them 2 or 3 times from everywhere in the world or in
hmm,
US for a sales meeting, like 4 days long, twice a year, if not 3 times a year. When
yeah.
you sync up, you exchange stories, you learn about the product, what you're going to do. But other people, technical people, this needs to be more frequent. And I know I love to hear what you have tried and what has worked, but I think if you're not getting face to face at least once a week, once every other week, you will not develop the deeper relationship. You won't get things done.
I would agree with you. There's multiple aspects, even in a company that is more mature and remote work. There's few benefits that you can hire talent you could never hire before, right? At a reasonable price. So the price is also very into their budget. But what happens is not meeting does not connect you in a very personal way to resolve conflict, to innovate. Innovation gets lost because you're just working on tasks. You're working on a few things that you discussed, versus like sitting there talking something and new ideas come up. that is being lost if you don't meet very regularly. I'll be honest. The more I meet people, my creative brain works rather than on a Zoom or social media. There's a certain amount of lax that happens when you're on a video camera all the time, mentally.
Yeah.
So, and I will switch to one more topic, Naeem, which is um, as a startup starts growing, say that we put a lot of these factors into play and we're making good progress, right? VCs come in and say, hey, the first thing that most VCs will look at and say, you are not CEO material. We'll hire more, like experienced execs for this organization as we're putting in more money or pumping in more money. Um, what are your thoughts on that? Why does that occur, and how can you prevent it, or why do you enable it?
Enable, maybe show me a word because I think I cut out your audio was cut out for a second.
Right. So what I meant to say is, how do you prevent that, or when do you subject yourself to say it's okay? I want to grow my company, and I do want to bring in the external expertise.
Bring the external expertise.
Yeah, for your management, CEO, and roles and other roles.
Yeah. So my feeling is this is not a board level question.
Mm-hmm.
See, the thing, maybe this is part of this conversation. What is the role of the board? And
Right.
what is the CEO's relationship with the board? And that can come back specifically to that. So this is a mistake many first-time CEOs make. They think board is their boss. They want to get board's permission to do things, to hire executive coach, to hire a consultant or something to help them. That's not a board level decision. Boards, basically, the only decision one board has to make is to issue more stocks, to hire senior executives, some
Mm-hmm.
partnerships, maybe, or in their merger and acquisition. So board so what I'm saying is that about 5% of the time when you bring that information to the board, and board will make the decision. That's M&A. That's fundraising. About 10-15% of the time when you want board's opinion so you can make a better decision. That's like hiring an executive or bringing in a partnership which is key to the company, or it may be a new product direction or dimension. 80% of the things which are by eye to the board. Board doesn't want a CEO who's always saying, mommy, can I do this? So some first-time CEOs see them all the time making this mistake. They want to run everything by the board. I gotta let the
Mm-hmm.
board know. Boards are your advisors. Their job is to help you. They're not your boss. Get used to it. You have a new job. You are the boss. So since I coach startup CEOs, this conversation comes up frequently. So you're going back to your point, if I understood correctly. When do you bring in the expertise which may
Yes.
be missing, the holes in the company? And the answer is as soon as you recognize there's a hole in the company, in expertise, it's your prerogative to go out and seek advice. Could be advisors, could be mentors, could be consultants. So this is where your Rolodex comes in. What is your network? Who can you, so I frequently did that when my last
Mm-hmm.
company was in agriculture space. So what did I
Right.
do? I asked one of my interns to see what were the grain storage was our focus. What were the top 20 papers, most cited papers in grain storage published in the last 5 years?
Right.
You can search that, you can make a list. Then I
Yeah.
asked them, give me a spreadsheet with the names of all the authors and give me their emails of those 20
Right.
most cited papers. So I had a list of like 43 names. Then I wrote an email to all of them to say, we are doing something in this area. You are expert in this area. Love to get your advice if you're on the right track. Would you be open to a 15-minute Zoom call? But I don't know, 11, 12 people responded and said yes. We had those conversations, and I offered 3 of them a role as an advisory board member. So I was able to bring in the missing expertise by using this
Mm-hmm.
method, and then other
Right.
methods too. So your point is that it's your prerogative to always double check, because you may be off track. You may not be thinking everything. You only have
Right.
certain aperture, and your
Right.
other team members are too busy developing the product or selling. It's your job to step up, look at the whole horizon, see, am I doing the right thing? Am I going the right direction? Should I make some adjustment? So yes, it's very much your job.
Makes sense. And now I will lead this question slightly, like higher up in the direction, right? So A startup CEO job is very taxing, right? Because you always are alive, thinking about multiple different angles of what's going on in here. The word of work life, the balance of who you are at work and who you're outside is minimal.
Yeah.
There's often these words, you need to give up your shirt to make a startup work, right? And this is one of the biggest deterrents to a lot of people who have great ideas to make a startup successful. What are your thoughts on that? Is that life such, true to the word that you have to give up your shirt to make a startup work? Or there are other mechanisms where you can have a better balance and still pull it off?
So I think the question
Mhm.
is the problem. So let me elaborate. See, when you talk about work-life balance, that implies they are imbalanced. They are two different things, somehow have to be balanced.
Yeah.
My approach is, what if I integrate the two? So there's
Right.
nothing to balance. So how do I integrate the two? Integrate the two by, in my schedule, like a meeting, I block out certain times. It could be family dinners, or it could be a yoga session. So they're blocked out like a meeting. So people have to just schedule around them. I'm busy in that time. They don't know. Then I make sure that even things are busy, 1 month, one weekend, or one long weekend, you get away with family, you do something fun. So this allows people to plan for that weekend, then talk about the weekend, and before you know, next month has come. So this
Right.
creates that a release valve. And once or twice a year, when you with kids, you're taking a long vacation. My job was I get up at 5:30 in the morning and do
Mhm.
all my emails, all my phone calls by 8:30, 9 o'clock when they wake up. You pretend you just woke up. What is everybody doing? So you have all caught up by then. And they don't even know that you just sacrifice a little bit of sleep. So by integrating these little tricks as part of your, then this, so there's no imbalance. I mean, there's always some imbalance, but you minimize the imbalance. And
Right.
part of the startup CEO is you cannot just because you go away for 2 weeks doesn't mean that things are going to go away. You just come back with a
Right.
much bigger pile of crises to deal with. So why not deal with them as they come? Integrate in your life. That's my philosophy.
Right. I like
I know
your
your philosophy
philosophy.
is different. You turn off and you disappear. I know you.
Yes, I know. For me, it's slightly different. I need to disconnect to become more creative. And if I get very busy all the time, I'm not able to like think beyond tactical. I struggle with that a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, each one's individual, but I like your idea. You should at least, everyone should give it a shot. I think we're almost close to time. There's two things I want to get to. One more question.
Yeah.
Everybody asks the question, what is the difference between an early stage startup CEO and a CEO of a bigger, larger what is the muscle that they'll have to change and build to get to being a CEO? Like, say that I was a CEO of startup and it was successful, but we gave it away. How do I
Yeah.
become a CEO of a more mature, bigger company? What is the jump involved in it?
Well, the flippant answer is as company grows, it's less fun because you're much more dealing with operational reviews,
Mhm.
spreadsheets, and all kind of dashboards. When you early stage is fun because you're dealing with customers, trying to find with A players, you're trying to figure out which way to go. There's a lot of confusion, a lot of room for creativity. It's less structured. So that's the sort of flippant answer, the high level answer. But in fact, the difference is, how do you delegate to a team members, because you're good at doing several things yourself. You can talk to customers, you can have an engineering meeting, you can do this and that, but this is not your job anymore. As company grows to the
Mhm.
next phase, you have now people capable who can do that job. Your job becomes to articulate clear direction and justify, remove obstacles on people's way so they can accelerate.
Yeah.
It's not to necessarily tell them what to do, because if you hire them right, they know what to do, but you need to just tell them where to end up and
Right.
remove obstacles, help them how you can help them get there. Philosophically, that's the difference.
Yeah.
Obviously, complexity changes.
Right.
As the company grows, there's a lot more to do externally with investors, with partners, with customers. In the beginning, you're a lot more focused internally. You'll get the product right. So I don't know if it's a satisfying answer, but it's a mixture. It evolves.
It
Grill me more.
evolves. No, no,
Yeah.
no. I think there's more to talk about that, but we don't have a lot of time. I'm going to go into something fun topic. You know, everybody talks about, we're talking about Silicon Valley life, right? So everybody looks around to each other and says, where do I meet some of these top CEOs? If I was in the Bay Area, or if I was in Silicon Valley, or if I was in San Francisco, where would I come across what are the hang-up joints for some of these people?
Well, hangout joints, there may be many. I don't even know if I know them all, but there are events happening every day. And
Yes.
there are different lists when you can see what are some of the events happening in law firms, there are panels by universities. So usually those are the places to go. I get, I guess sign up with all kinds of things on an ongoing basis and try to make a point of attending like one event per week, if not more. Uh, what are some of your things you have observed? What makes sense to you?
Well, I'll share a fun note for early stage startups, at least before the pandemic. And I haven't visited very often now, but Red Rock Cafe in Mountain View. Just go sit upstairs. The coffee shop is at the bottom. Pick up your coffee. A lot of people, people would come and use that as an office and work out of there. So you'd
But
get
this
to
is
meet
which
very
one is Red
interesting.
Rock? Which one? Red
Red
Rock?
Rock. Yeah,
Yeah,
Red
Red
Rock.
Rock.
It's a
Yeah,
coffee shop. Yeah.
yeah,
And that is a meeting place for a lot of people who are doing early stage startups. And I think still
yeah,
it is. So you can just go there, sit with the computer, work. And then the real thing is you got to take a step forward and talk to someone random and you'll learn many, many, many things.
yeah,
So
yeah. So
that
there, yeah, that and there's also a couple of beer places. Stein is one, and
is
a lot of people
science.
after work hang out there.
Yes.
And the famous place in Woodside is Bucks. That's for coffee breakfast place, and that's for a lot of the VCs meet with entrepreneurs. That's very popular
Right.
place to go. Bucks, BUCK. Yeah, there's some
Nice.
watering holes like these, and I'm sure there are many more which I don't even know young people would know.
Correct. I mean, there's many more, but just some of the common ones that people know for fun. There are some joints. It's just that you don't have to wait to meet somebody. There are
Yeah,
some of these joints you can go and you can even cross an idea, share it there, learn from
yeah,
other CEOs organically because what are they struggling with? What do they do? How do they solve problems? I think that's also another mechanism that most people forget. Most
yeah.
people look to read a book, a podcast, or they look for an advisor. But simplest thing is meet another person who's like you and ask them really, really hard questions, and will tell you how they navigated it. So
Well, good. If anybody is listening to us, and if you're looking to some as an advisor, as a coach, Meena specializes in technical topics. I do startup CEOs and business. So we look forward to hearing from you. You can check us on concordiaventures.com. All the episodes are posted. And I'm looking forward to my long weekend in July at Sonoma County. I'll be staying at and eating at Single Thread. So I'll have something to say when next time I see you guys.
I'm
Meena, anything
extremely
coming up?
envious. I'm extremely envious because my vacation is past. I actually went to Palm Springs and went to the restaurant Tequila, which is a play off of tequila. Wonderful food. If you're ever in Palm Springs, do visit that restaurant. You will enjoy the food and the experience is great. So that would be my recommendation. I'll
Great.
be
We look
working hard
forward to.
and then I will see you all from Denver. That's my goal.
Okay. Well, we look forward to seeing you again, guys, in a couple of weeks. So send in some questions and I look forward to continuing a journey together with new guests and new conversations. Bye bye.
See you all.
You've been tuning into Silicon Valley Life with your hosts, Naeem Zafar and Meena Meyyappan. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, concordiaventures.com. Thank you for your positive feedback, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.